So I could have titled this talk. I was talking with Gloria. Said the title is really should probably be videos coming for your infrastructure. So we'll talk about some things that we are doing together with Quanta to make your life easier in terms of what the user expectations are increasingly becoming. So we're not going to talk necessarily about infrastructure. What I am going to tell you are some of the implications we see on infrastructure and architecture. And my focus tends to be on the digital video and media, which is an increasingly growing set of services that tend to be based on video technology. It's a very fun space. However, there are some opportunities and there are some pretty tough consumer expectations. When you're talking about what many of us would know of media consumption, it has been pretty passive consumption. What's fascinating, though, is for those of you that have in-home market testers, also known as teenagers or children who know how to work iPads, you know that the user expectations are changing, especially with the generations. Richer content is a great example. This could imply 1080 to 4K to 8K, and in fact, many of the 5G operators that I talk to over in Asia, their plan is 5G is going to run 4K and 8K, and it's going to do it beautifully. Now, it could also mean a richer user experience where you're interacting with the content, such as Netflix Black Mirror series. The immersion that is also being expected, what's really fascinating about the word immersive is your mind probably goes to VR goggles, and we do show that here. But many people actually get stuck in stories. And so our vision is really how do we make the infrastructure something that can be used to create and transmit and bring new stories to life that cannot be told in the traditional economics. One other of my favorite examples, I learned this last week at IBC, increasing intelligence. Did you know, and you might know this if you are a video-on-demand subscriber, it takes on average 17 minutes to be able to decide what title do you want to watch. It is almost as bad as that conversation, hi honey, what would you like for dinner tonight? I don't know, what would you like for dinner tonight? It's a very difficult, challenging selection process where increasing intelligence can actually simplify that process, and you can watch your content that much quickly. So all of this is moving on this journey of intelligent visual experiences. And in fact, when you talk to different generations, this is how they build communities. They are not necessarily living IRL in real life. They are building friendships and relationships on a global basis. One of the biggest phenomena of something like Epic Fortnite was the fact that people were building communities worldwide in a global way, which are things that are possible only with cloud architectures and a lot of the innovation that Quanta has been bringing and making possible. You can see on the bottom, there's a lot of market opportunity here, whether it's video analytics or Ultra HD, which is going to eat the internet, I'm pretty sure, or live internet video experiences. We see an increased number of people who want to be their own broadcasters. They have their own stories to tell. And then immersive media as well. Lots of opportunity, but it's requesting anytime, anywhere experiences on any device. And that's where this end-to-end design comes in. One of the fascinating things about these services, if you are an infrastructure person, I'll tell you, every time I meet with the infrastructure team at the operator or the service providers, they usually say, oh my gosh, you talk to the video teams. I have them coming out my ears because there is a lot of unique requirements for these workloads in the data center. Content creation, obviously. Lots of analytics for the recommendation engines to simplify those searches, compression and transcode. What's really fascinating and tends to get left out of the picture is that that is only one part of delivering these services effectively. So the network and the edge, as Mike was talking about, are increasingly important. And in fact, when you look at the edge, it is not new. For any of you that have been delivering web experiences, how do you get around not having hourglasses when the web page is loading? It would be called CDN. It's a really, really critical component. And it's not necessarily the CDN you used to know in the past. The network is another interesting component. one of the things that we have found in working with the services teams is that in reality, at times, the total cost of ownership for an entire service to be delivered is not actually in the data center at all. Actually, that can be as little as 1/10 of the total cost of ownership of delivering a service. It actually is in the network. And so having the bit rate efficiencies, having the ability to leverage the network in a flexible way is unbelievably important, and it tends to be one of the biggest bottlenecks for delivering these services effectively. So we like to say there are many, many hammers, there are many tools in the toolbox, but you don't actually just need one hammer. You do need an entire portfolio. And that's what we've been working on with Mike and Quanta. And so this is really not very new. So move faster, store more, process everything. If you have been in the computing industry for any length of time, it doesn't matter if you are a microprocessor designer, a systems designer, a services designer, or you run a data center. You are always dealing with the same challenge every generation. You get great computing performance, but you might not necessarily have your storage close enough or fast enough. You may not necessarily have the network completely up to par. We are all playing whack-a-mole with moving faster, store more, process everything. And this is why Intel has really started looking at this data-centric infrastructure so that we think in advance, what are the overall balance points to be able to deliver a cost-effective and great user experience for these new services. So one of my examples that I am going to use, because I am in the media and entertainment technology part of the industry, content creation, processing, distribution, and consumption. These actually should have bidirectional arrows because there are so many content creators that are actually on the endpoint, so to speak. But this is really where it becomes so important to think about the whole solution and those balance points between processing, storing, and moving the data. So we're scaling across this entire spectrum. And to just give you a few quotes, I did use these last week at IBC. My two favorite ones are in the middle. Anivia, actually, their encoder leveraged VNNI, which was originally intended for deep learning boost. So it wasn't necessarily just an encoder optimization, but they were able to get 20% more performance, which very often translates into 20% better bit rate efficiency. Quilt is another one, and this is a great example of collaboration with Quanta and Intel. Next generation Xeon scalable processors plus Optane, they could double the amount of content they can store at the edge for the same cost per node. Now, for those of you that's like double the amount of content at the edge, what does that mean? If you are trying to move back and forth in a video stream, and you hit past the buffering point, you get the little hourglass, or you get sometimes a little clock that spins, or maybe you don't get a response at all, because it has to go all the way back to the cloud and come all the way back out so you can see the content. But in this situation, the user experience becomes so much better because you can put double the amount of content for a stream closer to the users. It also helps with bandwidth, so really important pieces. Improved services. This is one that Mike talked about, and I should have coordinated maybe, but I'll do a different flavor. Network cloudification. Now, for those of you that are in cloud infrastructure, you may be wondering, well, I already do NFV and SDN. I already have a great network. But one of the things that I have noticed through my career in moving between cloud service providers and comms service providers is there's a bit of a management or language barrier where the network itself has been really finely tuned for one application historically, and that would be voice. Now, there's this gradual transformation that's been happening where you can move from a traditional network to an intelligent network. And what does that do for you? Well, one of the things I hear from cloud service providers is there can be blind spots in terms of the service experience you can deliver for your customers. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that the architecture in the network and the architecture in the cloud, they may not necessarily match in terms of their ability to leverage automation. things like SDN and NFV, they take huge strides forward in being able to have a continuous, I don't want to say one pane of glass, that's a bit of an old term, but have a continuous view of how the user experience, while using your infrastructure, end to end, even over that last mile, how is that actually working for your customers? So a lot more tuning and a lot more control. And Rakuten would be a great example of this. They are a pioneer. They went completely greenfield. The TCO that they were able to achieve in doing something that was a completely cloud-native network on top of Quanta hardware, pretty much end-to-end, from the virtual RAN, which is a radio access network, through the multi-access edge, so the edge, all the way through the core network. It's running on commercial off-the-shelf servers from Quanta. And they were able to get this done in a year. And it's a really fascinating setup. If you get a chance to see a video, you'll see that it's a data center, and then there's antenna, and that is their network. It's a really, really creative greenfield, groundbreaking architecture that allows them to manage the network just like it was a cloud, and vice versa. And then they can start sharing the hardware that had been originally envisioned with SDN and NFV in the first place. So to close, we do want to say thank you to Mike and thank you to Quanta. We've been on this journey for a very long time together, and I had the privilege of being part of the telco, the NFVI journey, and now the Visual Cloud journey that's building on top of many of those same concepts. So thank you so much, Mike, and I look forward to continuing the journey together. Thank you.